Episode 8 of Silo begins in the past, with Hannah walking through to meet Mosley down in the cornfields. She's with a young Juliet, and the pair make a trade. He hands over a box, but in doing so is quick to point out that the silo always wins. It turns out there's a rabbit inside, and on the way back to their home, Hannah tells her daughter they're not going to eat it, as it'll be part of a larger experiment. In the present, Juliet evades capture, hiding in the nursery while Sims shows up to see Gloria. He notices the vents have been opened and he wants answers. Given she was unresponsive with the guards, he hopes she's going to be answering his questions instead. He wants her help and promises she won't be kept from her dreams if she does. After all, Sims has fathered a son thanks to her skills. Sims' dedication to the silo trumps all though, and all he needs to know is what's inside the vent. She mentions the bag, but the contents of which are still unknown. Sims has her medicated and kept under strict surveillance while he heads out, determined to find Juliet. They've lost her on the staircase, and Sims is quick to get everyone mobilized to track down her position. Juliet, though, is still in the nursery and now on her own, boots up the computer and tries in vain to access the hard drive. That's denied though, and she ends up sleeping on the floor too. She's awoken by an alert from Billings. Rushing back to the office, she finds a whole bunch of guards turning the place inside out. They are on the hunt for unregistered relics. Juliet is not alien to these searches, given she experienced this with her parents as guards showed up off the back of that earlier trade, demanding she hand over a relic, coming in the form of a magnifier. Juliet's father convinces Hannah to hand over the relic, and after assembling it, she's forced to watch it be completely destroyed. The judicial department also wants the rabbit, but they lie and claim they've eaten it. This also sows the seeds of doubt between Juliet and Pete too, despite the latter claiming he never actually ratted his wife out to the authorities. Back in the present, Juliet believes Sims is the one calling the shots, and the judge is just a puppet, a fake figurehead to draw the attention away from the head of security. Even the search inside the office is actually illegal. Juliet decides to play them at their own game, and alongside Billings, the pair head to judicial to stake their case. In fact, Sims is arrested for organizing an illegal search. Sims is surprised, but he comes willingly, although he is quick to point out that she's only in charge for now and that Juliet will regret her actions. Left alone in judicial, Juliet starts rooting through all the files, determined to find something that incriminates Sims and points to what's actually happening here. And she seems to find it in a file tucked away in the filing cabinet at the back. A whole bunch of files, which includes one on her mother, Hannah. Juliet heads down to see Pete, wanting to know what really happened to her mum. Pete admits that he regrets shrinking into himself after they lost Juliet's brother. As for Hannah, her grief pushed her outward, and made her bolder and more determined to find the truth. She started crossing lines and Pete tried to help her. He regrets not doing more to stop the agents and crushing Hannah's spirit the day of the magnifier relic incident, which happened to be the turning point. Pete gave up and failed her. Juliet points out that there are cameras in all the mirrors, which is how she knows now Pete wasn't lying when he said he never ratted Hannah out to judicial. The pair hug it out, but they're interrupted by an order from maintenance, who want to check the vents. This is the first time either of them have heard about this, so Juliet shows off the hard drive to her father and decides she's going to take it to walk. If anyone can get around the encryption here, it's going to be Martha. Unfortunately, there's a whole bunch of bag searches at different checkpoints on the stairs, which only makes things all the harder for Juliet to smuggle the relic around. Billings is also having troubles too. His tremors are back, and they're worse than before. His partner is worried, believing that Juliet is bad news and she's prepping for another rebellion. While he grapples with this, Martha receives a message from Pete about Juliet. But given she was supposed to show at 6 and it's now 7.05, she's worried that something is wrong. Sims is still behind bars, although the officers are torn between doing his bidding and following Juliet. In the end, they're stuck in a sort of limbo. Something is clearly not right though, and Juliet brings Lucas in so they can talk. She turns on the taps and points out the hard drive. There's something here that links to Sissup, which seems to only be accessed from her work computer, and it can't be done from where they are. Lucas doubts everything, until Juliet smashes the mirror and shows off the camera hidden behind. She wants his help, but Lucas refuses, pointing out that he won't compromise his mother. She leaves just in time, as judicial show up and demand she come with them. Juliet is stopped on the stairs by a simple bag check, but she manages to stall long enough for Bernard to arrive. He vouches for her and the pair head down to the crop field, right on the middle of where we saw Hannah trade off the rabbit at the start of the chapter. Down in the fields, Bernard wants to know what Juliet has. Unfortunately, it's all one big setup, as it turns out it's not Sims in charge, it's actually Bernard. Sims has been the puppet pulling the strings of another puppet. They know about the hard drive too. The needs of the many require the sacrifices of the few, Bernard says nonchalantly, as he claims the silo is a threat to everyone. Juliet tries to flee, but it's no good, there's too many guards. They take her back, but on the way up the stairs, Billings arrives. Juliet pleads with him to listen and he's torn between both sides. Sims punches Juliet in the stomach for her efforts and she doubles over. When she notices Billings' arm shaking, she finds an opening, wrestles free from his grip and jumps over the edge of the stairwell. Juliet tumbling down off the edge of the stairs and landing not far down on a pathway leading out into another area of the silo. She's gone. But Sims believes Paul Billings has let her go and casts his doubts over the deputy sheriff. Bernard is not happy either when he finds out, reprimanding Sims. "Rob, I hope you understand what we're facing here," he says, as Sims doubles down on his efforts to try and find Juliet. As for Paul, he heads back home and cradles his arm, lamenting that he lost his grip. Despite taking all these medicines and herbs, his partner, Kat, believes Paul should speak up and admit he has the syndrome. She wants him back in judicial, but Paul has a duty to this position and doesn't want to give it up so quickly. Furthermore, should Paul actually come clean and admit the truth, they'll know that he lied to get the sheriff position and they could send him out to clean. To remedy that, Paul decides to make things right, determined to catch Juliet. Sims does the rounds, sending various raiders around to different levels to those who know Juliet. Sims visits Pete in person, but he feigns ignorance and claims he knows nothing. And out of all the places that Juliet ends up, she's actually in Sims' apartment. Juliet blindsides Robert's partner, holding her up at gunpoint, urging her not to speak and handcuffing her to the kitchen. Juliet heads over and uses the computer, checking the contents of the hard drive. As the percentage slowly ticks up, Paul heads to Juliet's apartment, which is currently being turned inside out by raiders. He also has no clearance to go in there, given his role as deputy sheriff is being usurped for the good of the silo. Instead, he's told to leave. Paul decides to wait for the raiders to leave round the corner before sneaking in himself, going against silo orders and starting to believe something is not quite right here. He looks everywhere, and after removing the seal on the bathroom cabinet, takes it off and finds the Amazing Adventures book hidden behind. His hand shaking, Paul looks through the pages and is shocked by what he finds. While this goes on, Bernard decides to question Lucas about his role in all this and what he's hiding with Juliet. He reveals a number, 18, and as a result he's locked up. As for Juliet, she manages to get into the hard drive, using the code library and sifting through the files. As she does, Sims and Bernard manage to track down the hard drive, which they know is in Robert Sims' apartment. Robert's partner manages to bust herself out of the cuffs, given she has a key in her pocket, and urges Juliet that she needs to think about what she's doing. Should she decide to stay, they're going to kill her. So interestingly, she lets Juliet run away. Juliet manages to get past security again, thanks to Patrick hacking the cameras and helping her slip into his house. She makes it to his apartment and with the help of another technician, who reroutes the drive so it shows that it's flashing up on a completely different level, manages to hack in and check the files. That video of George Wilkins is certainly revealing, as he admits that he transferred to mechanical specifically so he could find someone to use as a guide. That person happens to be Juliet. However, he didn't account for falling in love with her and he laments his own feelings. George, though, tells Juliet that he's found a 15-foot door of metal and she has to find it. While this is going on, Paul burns the book he found in the oven, but not before ripping a page out for himself to keep, folding it up and placing it in his pocket. As he heads back to the sheriff's office, holding the paper and contemplating his next move, we cut back to Juliet once more, who learns that the clues she's looking for happen to be on a file labeled Jane Carmody Cleaning. When she plays the video, it shows the outside world, the cam footage from our first cleaner whom we followed at the start of the series. Is this really the truth, or another veiled lie? We'll have to agonizingly wait for next week's finale. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and I hope you enjoyed the Silo story.